For more on this, political strategist Fred Hicks joins me live now from Atlanta in Georgia. Thank you for being with us on the program. So Hegseth, as we know, he doesn't have a lengthy track record in politics. So what do you think his policy making will look like?
Well, now Secretary Hegseth has pledged his loyalty and his support and his agenda to be that of the president, and he will do what Donald Trump wants him to do. And that is taking a very aggressive position and stance militarily. That is also having a bit of isolationism. And if we paid attention to what the new president has said, he does have a very aggressive foreign policy agenda. Now, that being said, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense can and often do work hand in hand. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if he intends to work with Secretary Rubio on issues like Greenland and the Panama Canal. And then also what happens, of course, with Russia and Ukraine and what happens there in the Middle East. So there are a lot of issues, a number of issues. But I think we can expect him to try to carry out letter to the letter what Donald Trump has said he'd like to do.
What do you make of how the Senate voted for him? 50-50, they were quite divided.
Absolutely. So I was not surprised that Senator Murkowski or Senator Collins voted against him. The big surprise was that Senator Mitch McConnell, the former Senate minority and / majority leader when Republicans were in charge, that he voted against it. And that was hugely symbolic. Listen, Senator McConnell and President Trump have been opposite of one another many times. In the immediate aftermath of January 6th, Senator McConnell, who was then the majority leader, was quite critical of Donald Trump. And then we've seen them butt heads a few different times. So I think this is one to watch. The fact that this was 50-50, the narrowest of margins, the narrowest possible margin, it says quite a bit about Pete Hegseth and that he does not have a mandate. But the reality is that he is the new secretary, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And of course, budget approval is going to be a big hurdle that he's going to have to overcome. How do you think this division is going to impact that process?
Well, now that the confirmation process is over, I expect that Republicans will do what Republicans do, and that is generally support the Defense Department and vote for budgetary increases. Whether you're talking about the R&D side, you're talking about weaponry, or you're talking about pay for military personnel, pay and support for military personnel, both domestically and abroad. So I think that the budget will stay as is, if not increase, and particularly depending on what the U.S. decides to do on the promises that Donald Trump has made. Now, the areas where we can see a change in the budget, the area I would watch is immediately looking at what happens with funding to Ukraine. And then also, if the ceasefire holds or if it does not hold, what the U.S.'s position will be there in Israel and Palestine.
Political strategist Fred Hicks, I appreciate your analysis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.